Live. I think we're going
Yes,
live.
we're live.
Are we live if nobody's watching? Hi, Ben.
Looks
How
like
are
it.
you?
I'm well. I
Didn't
had a
mean to get
nice.
existential on the first question.
I know. Yeah.
So we have
Ins-
a
ins-
exciting guest with us today. We have
Oh, I don't know about exciting.
retroCombs.
Yes, definitely.
Stephen
Hey,
Combs
good afternoon.
joined us. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for the little pre-chat we had earlier. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Good getting to know the two of you.
Well, and the
Likewise.
question I asked that helped me like Stephen a lot more is I said, well, are you a Commodore person or an Apple person? He said Commodore. And I'm like, I warmed right up. So
Well, and as I said, Bill, I blame you for half of my life. I blame you for, so we'll have to talk about that a little bit.
Well, you know, for the time, at least with Commodore, you don't get old waiting for it to boot, right? Our lives,
right.
we may be loading off the slow serial bus. Okay, we'll take credit for that. But at least there, you know, it was instant on back in the old days, you know.
Which is one of the reasons I really appreciate it even today. As a matter of fact, I did a blog. I think I did a blog post recently about why, or was it a video? I think maybe it was a video about why the Commodore computer is still better than a computer today. And I specifically around the Megger65, which we'll talk about. But you know, turning it on and just instant gratification, not waiting 5 minutes for something to boot up or
very few
update.
ECC errors on a Commodore. Yeah. Very little error checking.
Yeah.
So what was your first Commodore? How'd you get into Commodore or any early computer? You know, what was
the VIC-20 was really my entry into computers, period. I mean, that was it. Now, I had an interest in electronics, much to my parents' chagrin. There you go. I have 3 of them in there. I won't walk over to get one. And there's one, actually I have 4, 1 working and 3 for parts, but it's over here somewhere. But yeah, 3 to 1. Well, you know, parts they're really starting to blow up nowadays, right? But back in the day, I just tore every electronic component down. I mean, we'd have a stereo, and the first thing I'd do, and I'm sure my dad hated this, is I'd start tearing it down to see what made it work. Luckily, I generally got it put back together. And then I started experimenting with DC motors and plugging it into the wall with AC, thinking it would go faster. That's a boom, is what I learned about that.
Yeah. One way.
So I was very curious, and admittedly, in high school, I was kind of known as the kind of geek, right? The electronic geek. Yeah, I did, sports and some other things, but really people knew me because I was kind of a geek.
For electronics,
for electronics, yeah. And right around 79, 80, I was in a town of about 3,500 people. Okay. And we had a little Sears Roebuck catalog store. And I remember, as I mentioned to you a little bit earlier when we were together, I mowed lawns because I saw this thing called a VIC-20 computer. I said, a computer, I must have a computer. I must know how this thing works and how this is going to change my life. So I mowed yards the whole summer, saved my money, got a VIC-20, ordered it from the Sears Roebuck store, a month later or whatever, went up, picked it up, brought it back, didn't have a data set or anything, and was just started hacking away on it and trying to figure out. But still to this day, that manual influenced my life going forward. That was the best manual ever. I love the VIC-20 manual. And then, of course, with that came video games. We had a little local arcade. I played arcade. So I really got known for being the computer kid. Now, again, there were other people buying them, like families down the road buying a TI or something. But I was the only Commodore in town at the time. And the only one really programming on it. Everybody else was just buying cartridges and playing games on them. But I was hacking around in BASIC. Yep.
Right. And it was a time when computers weren't compatible with each other. Nowadays, there's 2 camps more or less. But back then it was like each one was different. And it was open field running for designing them. So, yeah, very cool.
Yeah. So even BASIC wasn't BASIC.
No,
you could look at it and all the essential elements of BASIC were the same, but to do anything of value, you still had to, there was still so much that was just hardware specific.
Yeah.
So
and as I said, I didn't have a data set, so I remember, I would get magazines or the manual and I type them in, and I would leave my computer on overnight so I could continue to do whatever this program was in here.
Oh yeah.
And so it wasn't till I think it was Christmas if memory strikes that I finally got a data set. I think I had enough money from Christmas cards and that kind of stuff. And then I could save, and I thought I was uptown at that point until I learned that you don't throw cassette tapes on speakers and then you lose your programs and all that stuff. Yeah. All the things that go with that. Right.
Yeah.
Right. So what was cool for back then is you did turn on a computer and you could start programming. If you turn on a DOS computer, I mean, you can do directories and stuff, but you'd have to load something to run something. But back in the day, you started talking to BASIC right away. And I think that helped make a lot of programmers in the world.
It did.
Yeah, I think so. And I'm not sure that not just programmers too, but I think it influenced like me. I know I got into, Ben, as we were talking a little bit earlier about AutoCAD, I got into computer-aided design because it seemed like it was an extension of design on a computer, but that was because of my interest in computers, right? And I love drawing too. As a matter of fact, to this day, I still draw and sketch on everything. And it was just that, again, it influenced me. It said, hey, I think there's something here. I can do something with this later in life, maybe actually have a career.
So we skipped over the part where you have a blog and a website. Can you mention that for us? How do people find you?
RetroCombs.com is a good way just to get there. That's an easy way. And I have had some kind of blog or some kind of YouTube channel probably for 10 years. As a matter of fact, it's so fun to go back to my YouTube. Well, it's fun for me. It's probably not fun for everybody else. But I used to have this little spot on a local TV station called Inspector Gadget. They knew about me. I was at the community college and they were looking for somebody to come in and just talk about gadgets. So I'd go in and I'd find something cool. And so I think the first iPod Nano and some other things I showed, the first iPhone we talked about. And I just kind of downloaded those from my TiVo, put them on YouTube. Nobody was worried about copyright or anything like that. As a matter of fact, they're still there to this day and the local channel hasn't really asked for it. So they're still there, but I did that. And then I kind of left that campus for a while, moved to another campus, but in that time it was kind of dormant for a while. And I just, every once in a while, I throw something about an Arduino up there, or I do something to support a class I was teaching. And then right before COVID, probably started getting re-interested in retro computing again. And then I decided, I'm going to start putting some of the stuff up that I do on video, because I was really interested, not necessarily in having a channel, but just in all the tech that goes in with video and editing and the cameras. I love cameras and audio. I was a former DJ back in high school, all that kind of stuff. So again, it just kind of all comes together and turns into this very small but loyal group of YouTube followers on my YouTube channel, as well as my blog. So, and I appreciate each and every one of them because they stay engaged, which is really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And
that's the thing I think Bill and I have found too, since we started streaming, and we started out streaming about anything to do with electronics, and we still have shows like that, because part of, I guess, the why behind what we do is we're just passionate about design and all of that. I mean, look at the lab behind Bill. I'm still working on mine. It's kind of lame, but we found just over the arc of streaming for it's been how long now, Bill? 2 years?
Two or three? Yeah,
it's been a while.
Yeah.
It's been 2 years, I think, and just over a very long, gradual arc. Once we got a Discord server going, it's just the community that showed up, because there's so many people doing this now, and so many people, even young people who are like, I like the old stuff because it's a challenge to get it working and keep it going. Yeah. But it's also elegant and simple enough to understand every single piece of the system and squeeze every last drop of juice out of it.
Right.
And it's like we still, some of the people on Discord have shared some demos. For example, we still see demos from the Commodore demo scene, particularly in Europe, is still very vibrant, and there's still people who are multiple decades seasoned professional software developers in the corporate workspace, but for a passion on the side, they're doing demos still on C64 hardware, and it's just amazing. They're still finding new hacks and tricks to do things that no one thought was possible. It's just awesome.
Right.
Inspiring.
Right. Yeah, they know the chips by the bugs, and it's those bugs that they base the demos on. Yeah.
So Ben, do you have retro computers in your home? That's one of the questions I wanted to ask.
Well, I do, but I don't have well-known ones. So I used to have a lot of that stuff, and unfortunately let some of it go back because I've moved countries different times and had to really eliminate all the cruft. And it was unfortunately at a time before this whole thing sprung up and became something of value.
Right.
But what I've tended to collect, oddly enough, is retro microcontroller and industrial stuff. So, you know,
Interesting.
I've shown on the show before, I still have my, I'm a computer systems engineer, but I started out going to college and getting my associates. And the first computer, I've shown this on the show before, the first computer or second computer systems class we had, even in that program, we actually made our own single board computer, and it was a 65 CO2
wow,
single board computer. And so, you know, I've managed to keep some of that stuff and some Z80 development systems I had and other things like that. So I've been looking on eBay for a long time. I would really, I've always wanted an Amiga.
Yeah,
I gave away Amiga chassis, because they didn't mean anything. But I tell you what, anything 64 or Amiga that's actually functioning now is either got non-original chips in it. If it's a 64, they've taken the SIDs out, they've taken the SID and replaced it, or they're horrendously expensive. And so,
now, see, that's been where I really love the hobby. I love what's happening with using FPGAs, using Arduinos to replace chips. And it's kind of where I've kind of landed. So my channel is really about, you know, I'm not as geeky as like Adrian and Jan Beta and those guys who are, and I'm, quite frankly, I'm not the guy who you would want to see try and repair one because my repairs are just horrendous. And I'm sure people on YouTube would say, quit doing that. Don't do that. Don't put the soldering iron there. So I wouldn't want to subject myself to that. So I like to focus on what could just the normal person do to get into the retro hobbies. How can they take some modern components, add to it, and do some really fun things? And then what are some of those modern recreations? So, you know, you were talking, Ben, about the Amiga. I will tell you, you've got to get the A500 because you can hack that thing and run the full operating system, which is kind of cool. So, I mean, just some of those things are just fun to play with. And I'm not sure I would want to try and keep an old Amiga alive anymore. You're right. It's getting harder and harder.
Yeah. One of our community members actually did an open source ATX form factor motherboard design for Amiga 2000 architecture. And it was a very impressive, nicely done design. So I'm thinking if I ever manage to find the time and the components, because it takes a processor, takes an accelerator card, processor card. It would be a matter of getting the key chips like Agnes and so on, and doing it that way and putting it into a regular PC case probably. So I like that kind of mixing it up and redoing things as well. As far as 64 goes, I'd been looking I'd looked previously, just cursory look at the Megger65, but you've got that flashing up there behind you. Can you tell us something about the Megger65 then?
Yeah, and there it is right there. And it is let me just say, it is a beautiful thing. I am just super excited about this thing. So the Megger65 is, and I've got one other thing. I think this is, Bill, you might appreciate this if I can figure out how I want to do this. So this is the original C65 ROM being run on the Megger65, designed to kind of show its compatibility with the original design. I know we're not going to spend a lot of time talking about it, but is cool. It is one of those things that, let me go back here. Let's see. This is just the modern recreation. And inside is the FPGA and the board right here. You can see this is a lot different, Bill, probably than what you were used to creating in that space, right?
I literally had expectations as you lifted the lid, and they were different than what you show. Yeah.
So
and
what's
then
the central device in this? Is it a Xilinx or?
It's a Xilinx. Yep. And don't get too technical on me, because again, I am not one of those tech guys. I'm more of a user guy, and I know we should probably get somebody on your stream. I would recommend we get Paul Gardner Stephen on here, who's a fellow Australian, I think, too, Ben. So that would be fun. Or one of the other developers, but they can tell you all about it. But I've been following this for about 5 years. But just to kind of give you the, a real floppy drive, which is great. You get the whole clicking of the drive. It does have an SD card here. It has an SD card in the back, a micro SD, so we can load up .d81 images. This, of course, is our keyboard cable, which is so much better than the keyboard cables, Bill, that came on the Commodores. I'm sorry. And then this keyboard, what they've done is you can see just beautiful double stamped with the Petsky images on it. But it is a Cherry MX keyboard. So it's the best, as I say, it's the best keyboard to ever come on a Commodore computer. It's just fabulous. And again, the great thing about it
than we had.
Yeah, a lot more. You can see me typing. So here you can actually, I'm actually typing on the Megger65. But this is the original C65 ROM. But if I go ahead and do a reboot, here's that. Bill, as we were talking, the quick reboot in and out. So here's the updated ROM that they're working on with all the features, where they've tried to track the kind of the feature path for the C65, which never happened, obviously, and then adding some really fun stuff. So to include codes or basic commands like this. So, we would have loved to have had that back in the day.
Oh, yeah. So it's
when we were programming.
A ROM operating system. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right.
So it's really a cool thing. And one of these days you need to get one of the developers on to really talk about it. Now over here, if I can figure this out here, I got to get my body this way and then the pointing that way. There we go. If you, this is actually running on a Nexus 4. So the original Bitstream ran on a Nexus 4, and I just keep that running in the background. Is kind of fun, and I knew it'd be fun for this this stream. But that Megger65, I will tell you, Bill, I have not had so much excitement opening a computer since I opened up my Commodore VIC-20 and later my 128. It was just a blast.
Wow, very cool, very cool. So you mentioned people like getting into the retro business, How do they deal with monitors these days? I mean, I have a couple old monitors, but I also know how to get a video capture card to work with some of this wonky stuff. What do you suggest for people first getting into this? How can they see the computer display easily?
So there's just a really great ton of USB to RCA connectors out there, so you can get the composite video out, plug it in. But I will tell you, this device, and I think I can show you this device. This is going to be weird. Hang on, I think I can do this without being. Here it is. I'm actually using this to capture several devices. I'm going to go right here. This is the. Let me get it. Let me see if I can zoom. Get that. There we go. This is the Cloner Alliance Pro. This thing has been amazing because on the back you can't see it because I have some devices plugged in. It takes RCA composite. It takes VGA. It'll also take HDMI in. It will record HDMI onto this USB stick over here if I want to do that as well. But it'll also serve as a input device to Windows only, unfortunately. And I don't have a Windows device in the place. I don't use Windows. That's just not a thing for me. But if you do have Windows, you can use it as a capture device. So I have other capture devices. Typically what I do on my Mac is I take this USB out, run it through my ATEM Mini, as you can see there, and then I capture it that way. So, but that's an expensive way. Really, just though, and I wish I grabbed one here. Really, just a USB to composite is the best way to do it with a video cable.
Kind of things.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you for having.
Yeah.
Who would have thought you would have had one available, Bill?
Yeah, well, and what I found was that originally these didn't capture Commodore very good because Commodore doesn't really abide by the NTSC spec. These have gotten, I don't want to say sloppier, they're more tolerant of the video input, and now they work better than they used to. They used to be real poor, weak chroma, lots of noise, which the computers were guilty of themselves, but.
No, I didn't quite catch the connectors on the back of the the board in the Megger65, but does that use HDMI?
Yeah,
or
yeah.
is it?
It does, but what's interesting is it's not really a standard HDMI compliant, so I can't plug that into the A10 Mini to display up here. So I have to run it through the Cloner Alliance because it'll take anything, any kind of video, and it does it. But it does have HDMI. But what's really cool is it also has VGA out, so you can plug in an old school VGA monitor, which is what I'm doing here on the Nexus 4. That is a VGA with a 4x3 Dell monitor, just to kind of give it the original aspect ratio. It doesn't stretch it in HDMI, so it's its regular aspect ratio as well. Okay. The also on the back of this is a cartridge port, which I guess I should have talked about that too. So you do have a cartridge port, and I also have installed a serial connector, so I can go to a Linux or Mac machine. I can upload .d81 images, update the core, update the ROM, do everything without having to remove the SD card, which is just a nice feature. All those things that modern retro computers do to let us connect to real computers to make it easier, it's really appreciated by me for sure.
Right, very cool. So you go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask you, Steve. Like we have had this debate a little bit on our Discord too, and talked about it. But I just want to get your opinion. When is something retro versus just old?
Old, like me, right?
Like me too, Bill. Right? We were talking about our age. We're very similar. So I'm going to stick with 8-bit. That's just going to be my answer. If it's above 8-bit, I'm out. Yeah, I love an Amiga, but I really am into 8-bit computers and 8-bit Commodore. I mean, I can have fun with an Amiga, but when you start getting to Amiga, you start getting to just a little point beyond what I think is user accessible anymore. I think the Amiga, yeah, you could do some programming, but to our point earlier, I mean, we're just turning on a computer that fires up.
It's true.
Yeah, more. It's so complex, and if you're a user who's really wanting to get into retro computing and you start there, I think you're going to get overwhelmed and say, I don't understand what the hobby is about. I think if you get a VIC-20, a Commodore 64, or my personal favorite, Bill, and this is not shout out to you, I love the 128, despite its quirks. I love that computer more than anything. That was the one for me. But you just have this opportunity to just turn it on and do stuff. And then if you want to do things like GEOS and add some of these other things, you can add that. But I even posted, I remember I did a little video on the Amiga or the A500. I said, this is really kind of my first 16-bit. I don't know that I like this. I'm not sure I want to do this anymore. I really enjoy the 8-bit stuff. So my answer is anything with more than 8 bits is forget about it.
Well, what about 15 bits? I mean, 15 is kind of more like 8 than 16. That's
yeah. Yeah, we can go with that. Or 7 or 7-bit. Yeah, we can do something like that too.
Well, there were even 4-bit microprocessors.
The Burroughs and Sperrings of the days had oddball numbers of bits. They had like 17-bit and 23, and you're like, that's a prime number, but for some reason it made sense back in the day.
Bill, what was the Kim?
It's a 6502. This thing.
Okay, so it's still an 8-bit.
Okay, it's the originals. I think my 6502 is like 78, 77. So yeah, definitely 8-bit. Definitely the same architecture. I mean, because the processor defines the architecture. It's just you put different rooms in the house, but the house is the same size.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, the Kim relates to the VIC, which relates to the 64. Yeah.
So I will say I've never experienced the PET. That is something I have a curiosity with. But I'm not, Ben, to your point earlier, I'm not sure I want to try and keep one of those things alive and running. Those are
a lot of TTL in a PET.
Yeah, I just go to Chuck Hutchins in his website anytime I need to get a PET fix and just watch what he's doing over there. I don't know if you've seen his channel, but he does a lot of stuff with the PET, and so he's my PET master.
Okay.
Should I have said that, PET master? That doesn't sound good.
How much time do you spend on the probably high voltage in the monitor part of it? Because that's part of a PET. It's not just the computer, but you have the power supply and the whole monitor stuff too.
Yeah, he probably has to have at least 10 of them on hand to keep the videos going, and there'd be a lot of pet peeves along the way.
I'm writing that one down, Ben. Pet peeves, got it. Yeah, we'll have to do that. That should be the if you had a title, that should be the title for this one. Or wait till you have Chuck on sometime. I only have one CRT monitor in the whole place. I found we were moving out of a building where I work, and they had this mechanical or this medical lab that they were clearing out, and they were throwing these monitors away. And there was a CRT, had a bunch of these SDI inputs in it and some VGA inputs.
Wow.
And yeah, it's one of these days I'm going to feature it on the channel hooked up to something. But everything I've done has been, to your earlier point, it's all been to these HDMI monitors, LCD screens.
Right.
And anytime there's an emulator that says, "Do you want to turn on scanline emulation?" I'm like, "No, I don't think so. I'm good." It killed my eyes in the '80s. I don't need to do it to me now. So.
I felt that way too. I've seen a lot of videos, and we've talked a lot about CRT monitor repair on this channel because that's one of Bill's specialities, right? So, and I get it. It's almost as much a part of the hobby now as the computers themselves. It feels like some days, it's probably not quite that much, but I just remember in 2004 having when I first got my job at Altium, I had one LCD on the desk and one CRT, and it was a 20-inch, and they were good quality CRTs. They had XGA resolution, and I just remember every day thinking, I can't wait till these things are just gone.
Absolutely.
I hate these. I get headaches from them. I hear the squealing. I can't anymore because I've aged a bit since then. Played guitar loud one too many times, and I don't hear that 15 kilohertz quite so bad these days. But
right.
But
so
it's kind
another
of funny
guitar
how
player.
there's a resurgence. Yeah, and I feel like the people who hung on to them were artists, graphic designers, and artists because they could calibrate them and get them more closely matched to print than that's what I heard. Right?
I had a multi-sync 5E that when I went to pick it up at the FedEx, it didn't fit in my Datsun 280Z. The box didn't. I had to take it out of the box, clap the box down, and put the monitor in the hatchback of it. But it came with the monitor that you attach to the screen to calibrate the whole CRT. Yeah, so it shipped with the monitors back then. Huge.
Yeah, I was looking at they're outrageous, and I don't know. I'm looking in chat, and I see some of them love their CRTs. I'm glad they do, and I'm glad there's a group of people that want to keep CRTs alive. But I don't have enough space. The one I have is a little 13. You start talking those large monitors, there's just not enough space, and my back isn't what it used to be either. So I don't want to be lifting those things around.
I know. Yeah, I will say this though. One thing that CRTs did, and probably why, especially for retrocomputing, they can look better is they just blended pixels more naturally.
Yes.
LCDs, scaling on LCDs, you end up with a picture that looks awful. I remember getting my first, full HD TV and playing standard def DVDs on it, and I'm like, this is supposed to look so much better, and actually it looks worse.
Right.
Well, and I understand a lot of a lot of the demos exploit that blurring of those images, and some games did back in the day. And so I admittedly, every once in a while, I'll go back and see is this one of those games that did that. But even when I turn it back on, I go, I don't know that that's a difference for me. And
so for me, I would use CCS64. I've used for 20 years or more to play my old games on the PC, but I would always keep it on a tiny window and just crouch and look close to the monitor because I didn't want to make it full screen and have all those artifacts of scaling. So
the like for example on the 128 you see these jail bars, they call them, with static noise. They didn't look that bad back then, with the poor contrast of a monitor, and you were just happy to see stuff. But you see it on a huge LCD, and there's kind of like all the gory details. It's like the sneeze guard at your salad thing. It's like, oh, there's way too much going on here.
It's funny you say that, Bill, because I just learned about the jail bars. I don't know, maybe 6, 7 months ago, and I went, I don't remember those. I just don't remember that when I had mine. And I plugged it in and went, oh my goodness, there they are. They're right there, right in front of me. Yeah.
And I think it's as much that our standards changed as you know, some of it's the monitor, but I think at the time I would have seen the jail bars and go, yeah, that's as good as I can get that chip, and I would have moved on to something else. Yeah. So
there is let me see. Where did I put it? There is a device. Oh, hang on. I told you I'd do this, Bill, that I'd run around the room here. This is something something I'm interested in checking out. This is called the RGB to HDMI. And this is probably my next project, and I want to put this on the 128. I shared this in my last live stream. Again, this is another example of, and I have to again thank Chuck Hutchins, who let me know about this. He's been playing with this on a pet. But you plug in an Arduino right there, and then you load on the SD card, and you use the HDMI from the Arduino to plug into the LCD monitor. And then I've got to add pinouts to this, but I want to run that into the 128 and see if that takes care of the bars, the jail bars, and see if I can get a good, but the key thing I want 80 column mode without having on. It's hard to get 80 column mode out of
it was hard 128. To make 80 column mode work.
You did not help us there, Bill. Yeah.
I mean, that half of our effort went into that one feature. It was that bad, that 80 column thing. Yeah, that should have been a slam dunk for us too. So
one of the other computers, Bill, I have to, while I have you here, I have to talk about is right before COVID, I fell in love with the Plus 4. I don't know, you showed me your C116 earlier, right. And I fell in love with it because of the BASIC that was included, the form factor. I never had one. Was always curious. Yeah, there you go.
I love how it looks. That was the first.
Isn't it fabulous?
That was a very nice design. Yeah.
I went through this whole thing of videos, and I'm sure nobody's seen it because it was really early, but I went through the user's manual and went chapter by chapter to learn what this thing could do. And I recorded it and did the series. So I've got the whole user's manual as a video series. It's boring as all get out, just unless you're interested in it. But it was one of those ways that I could use things that I could do. And then I really got into what is this thing capable of? I got into discussions online about the Plus 4, somebody telling me it wasn't designed to be a business computer. And I keep going, I don't know. I think it was designed to be a business computer. I think Bill said that. As a matter of fact, I was so glad when this came out and said that. But I was just really curious in that history and the alternate reality that should have happened with that. And I'd tell you, I just love the Plus 4. I just think the BASIC in that was the precursor to the 128, obviously. The Megger65 has a lot of those trappings from BASIC as well. I just want to say to you, Bill, no matter what anybody says, it's a fabulous computer. If you like BASIC, you like hacking around, I think it's a wonderful machine.
If they had sold it for $49 and $79 like it was supposed to, there'd be lots of little, I mean, it was the Arduino of its day, I think. Yeah. I mean, I'm sorry, the Raspberry Pi of its day.
Raspberry Pi, yeah.
Keyboard came with it, yeah. So
you could imagine it could even now, a computer with what's in it, out of the box, even today, would be an exceptionally easy to use, useful controller for numerous projects.
And it included a ROM monitor. You could sit there and debug and disassemble itself. It was like, and to us, that was our little gift. I remember when the programmer showed me, he said, Freddie Bowen said, "We're leaving it in." I'm like, cool. Because at first I thought it was just something he was doing. Was going to take back out.
But then it was on every 8-bit going forward, right? I mean, the 128 had it.
Same guys going forward too. Yeah.
And they had that on the Megger65, which I appreciate. Again, probably just because the ROM originally, the C65 ROM had it. So yeah. So we were talking about the design. One of the things I did do, I wanted to share this with you because I don't know if you had a chance to see this. I talked about this is bringing everything. Remember we talked about the cassette with the VIC-20. Yeah. I created this thing right here.
Oh, and look at that. That's cool.
This is a 3D printed case for a Tapwino. A Tapwino is an Arduino-based tape controller, and this been in our pre-show discussions. I modeled all this in SketchUp, and then printed it on a 3D printer. Got these great little, you can see kind of the back, put all that together.
Very
and then
nicely done.
This plugs into the +4. You know, it's got that odd standard connector, Bill, that you guys did. Another pain in the neck decision of yours.
Yeah.
That's
but again,
mini
love
DIN.
it. Yeah, mini DIN. Yeah, exactly. It's is it 6, 9? What is it, 9?
Looks like a 9.
It's some prime number, probably. Yeah.
7. What's
7-pin mini DIN.
7-pin mini DIN. So,
so you
but
couldn't confuse it with S-Video or your PS2 keyboard. Or,
yeah.
But this was one of my lockdown projects when, you know, we were all looking for things to do, and I was actually kind of new to 3D printing. I can't, but you notice I stole the fin design.
That's a really
from the
nice
+4
print too. What printer did you use?
Yeah, that's a beautiful print.
That's a Creality Ender 3.
Oh,
believe it or not.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
The affordable one. So did you have to just side topic, because I don't have a 3D printer. I've got a tweaked K40 laser cutter. I've got a Bantam Tools mill, which is amazing.
That's nice. Yeah.
But I've never pulled the trigger on 3D printers because, you know, there's the gap between, you know, under $200 and then $2,000 or more.
Yeah.
And it's like, there's not a lot in between. And it's like, how do I know what's good or not? And
if
the
you're
Creality is on the low end, but it gets good reviews. Did you have to spend a lot of time with it to get that kind of quality printing?
Yeah, and a lot of it is about orientation. You know, how are you oriented to be printed, because you get the lines, right? So if you look, the line, I had to make some really decisions, but the lines are on the top. See those?
Yeah.
Right.
You see the layers right there. And I chose that because I said, well, that doesn't look bad. I tried it before where this was flat on the surface and it was completely smooth, but then the rest of it was. And I thought, you know what, I'm just going to live with that and just go with it.
You can make that a feature of the thing anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
Like,
we use
everything has every even molded plastic. You always have to choose a surface texture.
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah, exactly.
And even when we painted back in instrumentation, we would have the crinkle wrap or the bubble, the texture to the paint itself, you know, because flat paint showed any imperfection coming right out of the factory. So we would, I forget what we call it.
That's why we have orange peel.
Yeah.
Actually, that's something I noticed, just another weird side tidbit anecdote. When I first moved to America from Australia, I'm like, gee, the houses here seem really crappy.
Yeah.
Really?
But I'm on the West Coast, right? So everything here is hollow. There's no bricks. There is render on the outside, or stucco, I guess. Everything's hollow. And I realized later on, actually, it has to be that way in California for earthquake tolerance. Right. So I get it.
Yeah.
But inside, everything's orange peel or knockdown, like all the walls are textured. And you'd never see that in Sydney. Every house, even the cheapest homes in the cheapest neighborhoods, have a perfectly smooth finish in the drywall. It's just standard. And it took some getting used to. Anyway, weird, non-electronics, non-retro, but just a
Coriolis effect. Yeah.
It's a Coriolis difference.
Coriolis effect. There you go. You brought it all around, Bill. Nicely done.
Yes.
But Ben, I would tell you for $250, if you're a hobbyist like me who's not doing anything, you know, I'm never going to sell this thing. It was just something to see if I could do it. It's fabulous. As a matter of fact, during my last live stream, I shared a couple of upgrades. I've got a new. That's the other thing I love about the Creality. I've got a new main board that's going in. I have it has a heated bed. You can 3D print parts to make it better. And then I'm going to put a new touchscreen interface on it, and you can add to it with the base model. So it's a blast. It's part of the hobby. So
does it print acrylic well?
I have not tried acrylic
or ABS.
I've not tried ABS because that's a whole different. It will print ABS. I've just stuck to PLA because it's easy. I
only ask because I know if and when I start 3D printing, one of the things I'll be 3D printing is light pipes out of clear material. And,
Well,
those can be the materials used for custom light pipes. Usually you're going to use acrylic, which is the normal material for optic fiber and light pipes anyway. But it can or the other one. What's the other one? Is what's that other hard plastic that's usually clear? Polycarbonate.
Polycarb.
Polycarbonate. Yeah,
I
polycarb,
don't
yeah.
think that's 3D printable. I've never seen filament that's polycarbonate.
That stuff takes juju to work with in production.
Yeah, it's difficult because it's so hard and probably has a much higher melting point and all that. But
yeah, it looks like there's some folks in chat who have experience with ABS, and I remembered them saying, yeah, it has to be well ventilated, or you have to have a hood and
yeah, I remember the fumes. Yeah,
I'd forgotten about that. Yep.
Yeah. So in acrylic printing, Patrick says acrylic printing is difficult because of higher temperatures needed. Yeah. Because I wasn't sure if PLA was available in a clear.
I don't think I've seen it. I don't think you can make a perfectly clear PLA.
Yeah, because it's based on corn husks or something.
Right. Yeah. So it's not. Yeah, I got lucky and found this brown that kind of looked like, and I know the +4 isn't necessarily brown, but it was the closest thing I could find to match. There probably is somebody, but I wish somebody would perfectly match the Commodore. What color was that, Bill?
Our own. It's not a Pantone color.
It's not a Pantone color. So
and we had problems with it. I could tell you offline. We had problems with our own colors. And when we started putting C64s together, they didn't match. But we had to in the U.S. so we could say made in the U.S. So we couldn't pre-match the. So that's the story behind it.
Yeah. Someone mentioned Chris. Chris is always full of good ideas. Yeah. Printing from a mold. I might have to do that. I could machine a mold out of aluminium.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It's just a lot more work, you know.
Yeah, I was going to say that's 2015.
Homebrew injection molding is, that sounds really dangerous.
It does, yeah.
I'm sure I've seen people do it on YouTube. I know it's possible. Yeah.
No, you can find anything on YouTube, right?
Or I could use. He's probably considering maybe not injection molding. I could probably use epoxy. Actually, that's the way to do it.
Good, clear, right? Yeah.
I'll 3D print a mold, make it real smooth, then put some release in it, and use clear epoxy. Of course, why didn't I think of that?
Right.
Duh. Yeah. Anyway.
So, what'd you get after your VIC-20? What did you get?
Well, I skipped the whole Commodore C64 scene because I couldn't afford it, because when they were brand new, they were $499. Yeah. So I actually skipped the C64. I had a lot of friends who had them so I enlisted in the Air Force, Bill. When I was failure at college. I was a failure at college. I went a year and a half to college and said, this isn't for me. And I went into the Air Force and worked on automatic flight control systems. And I still kind of had my VIC-20. Yeah, it was a lot better. And then a lot of friends had the C64 and I was jealous. But then after I came back from the Air Force, when I finally learned how to learn, it actually took the military to teach me how to learn. I came back to college and then got a Commodore 128. And then I figured I'm going to do that because, well, that's the next thing. And it already has a C64 built in.
Right.
And unlike, I think, a lot of C64 folks, I was always or 128 folks, I was always looking for the 128 software.
Right.
So GEOS, I have to admit, the C128 version of GEOS was fabulous. And I was creating things with that my Mac friends were trying to create. I was creating lab reports with drawings and all that business. And they say, oh, you must have a Mac. And of course I get to gloat and say, no, I didn't spend, $1,500 on a computer like you did.
Right.
I'm doing all this with GEOS on a 128. So that was kind of my next jump. And I kind of gotten out of gaming. I mean, I was really using at that point computers for productivity. And the 128 keyboard was fabulous. I mean, it had the extended keyboard on it. And it's, as a matter of fact, I have mine back. I have
the BT100 keyboard. The story is I looked down, said, that looks good. I'm used to typing on that. Let's use that.
Those are really nice. So I'm curious, as you mentioned, you were using it for productivity. What ratio then would you estimate you spent in CPM with the Z80 versus?
So none. Zip on CPM. As a matter of fact, I knew it was in there But because I was, I was in drafting and design, Ben, at the time. I was in the drafting and design program. So I was taking classes like tech writing.
Mm-hmm.
It was all board drafting. So we weren't quite into computers until I was a senior when we got our first CAD lab. So I was doing all the board drafting, but I really wanted to create these wonderful physics lab reports, showing the free motion diagrams, all that business. Yeah, all that. And so there really wasn't anything for CPM that would help me. Everything was either a word processor. I forget the word processor. Did I used GEOS, but that wasn't the word process. What was the Commodore?
WordStar, WordPerfect.
No, for the 128, I think it was WordWriter too. Bill,
I forget. Yeah, that came along kind of.
One of those.
Yeah, actually, that makes sense because early versions of WordPerfect would have had to have used the CPM side of it, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
And, I used that 80 column mode then too. That's what really pushed me, and I got to really enjoy using that. So, and then in college, all the computers in the labs were basically DOS machines. So occasionally I would go there, and I think I had figured out some way that I could transfer documents from 128 to WordPerfect if I needed to. I don't remember what that was, but it seems like I remember doing that at some point.
Right.
Oh, WordWriter 128. Thank you, Mr. Landfill. There we go. Now we're talking. That was it.
Right. That back in the day before the word spreadsheet existed, right?
Yes. Unless you had a +4, and then you could try the spreadsheet on.
What did we call that? We just called. We never used. I never even saw the software run. It was added by marketing. Yeah, it was. You know what? I used to say it was horrible software, and I had to change how I said that because I never used it, so I don't know it's horrible. But I know it wasn't worth hundreds of dollars, right? I know that the computer was meant to design for $79, and you know the software can't be worth $300.
So there's two manuals that come with a +4. There's the basic manual and there's the application manual. And I polled my folks and said, you want me to go through that manual too? And I think it was pretty much unanimously, no, nobody wants to sit and go through those 4 applications. And it wasn't really 4 applications. It was, I think it was word processing, a calc, something with graphics. And then the fourth application was it made it, you think it was a database, but it was actually just managing your files on your disk.
I was going to say, it was a file manager. Yeah.
So, yeah, I may go back sometime just to get a complete bookend on that and run through a couple of examples, but it's not something that's just beckoning me to do. That is for sure.
I can tell you that the guy that did basic, Terry Ryan, he was enjoying what he was doing, putting these fancy commands in there and stuff like that. Great. He felt a lot of self-satisfaction from doing that.
Bill, is it true that at one point they thought about because there is a version of GEOS for the +4. I haven't been able to get it to work yet, but is it true that there was a ROM that they were thinking about popping GEOS in the +4, or do you remember that?
We made the blank EPROMs, which was a new thought for us, the idea of function key software and shipping a computer that had blank sockets so you could insert software later. We were like, oh my God, this is the way it's going. Well, of course, that's where they put the +4 software was in that socket. But so we were shipping it to have application software be insertable into it. We thought it was cool to do.
Yeah, that would have been cool. Absolutely.
It would have been cool. Then they stuck it, but all it did was leave room for that, +4 software to slide in there.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll call it software.
So the problem was Jack Trammell had a vision, right? Or he had a direction he was taking. The +4, it was called TED back then by us, but the 264, the 364 with the TI speak and spell speech stuff, and the 116, he had a vision for that. We had printers, we had monitors. It was going to be an entire family of products that you could outfit a small business with, right? And then once he was gone, marketing didn't have that vision. They literally didn't know what to do, but they had sold C64s before. I don't even know if they sold them. They worked there while the company was selling C64s. So to them, everything looked like a C64. Can't we just do that again? That made us a lot of money. And yeah, so it was just without Jack there, it was never going to work.
Yeah.
So.
I remember reading the magazines at the time. It seemed like everybody was crying when Jack left and went to it.
We were in shock. It's sort of. It's like, what? Yeah. So, yeah.
I can't remember where I saw it. I saw a graphic of the folks who moved from Commodore to Atari to Amiga and back. And
I've never seen that.
yeah, it's maybe that was that on, that may have been on the 8-Bit Guy's channel. Maybe he showed that in a recent video or a past video, but it's really interesting to kind of see the kind of what comes around goes around, right? All the way back to the beginning again.
That's yep, and that happens to this day. That's a pretty common thing. Yeah, I look in the EDA industry. We were talking CAD earlier before pre-show. It's the same thing happens in EDA because it's a decent, let's say, market cap in the industry. It's a decent business size, money-wise, but it's still pretty small and it's very, very specialized. So the same people tend to sort of float around from company to company.
Yeah. So what CAD did you use, Stephen? We were talking about CAD before the show. Where are some of your favorite CADs?
So, interestingly, that I mentioned earlier, that's what kind of got me out of the Commodore space. I had an Amiga and I was using it for some things, and it had some CAD applications. But in college, AutoCAD was the big thing. AutoCAD Release 9. Actually, we said Release 9. I think I toyed around a little bit with Release 8.
10.
Yeah, you started in 10.
Yeah.
Release 9, great DOS, man. You had to run that from DOS, and I remember you had to configure your memory just right in the sysconfig or whatever that thing was. And you boot 800 times to see if you maximized and optimized your memory to get it to run. And
your expanded versus your extended.
Oh my gosh, yes, expanded versus.
And you had to load high DOS and load high all your
Make sure
mouse
you didn't
driver
reuse the interrupt.
So it really pained me to get rid of a Commodore computer for the first time out of my house. I had to get something that would run AutoCAD, and I remember getting this cheap 486 clone, and I spent a boatload of money on that thing. I remember, to get me through the last couple of years of college, and then I had an opportunity to teach at the college as a graduate student. Obviously, I got better at learning when I came back to college, for sure, because I was a grad student. And then one of the professors there said, "Hey, you're really good at this CAD stuff. Do you want to co-write a book with me?" And I said, "I'm in. Let's do it." And so for probably 8 or 9 years, we wrote textbooks for AutoCAD. We did one by Q, which was using AutoCAD Release 12, and just had a blast. I love CAD. I mean, it was everything I did during the day. I taught CAD. I did some consulting on the side. People needed something, I'd draw it up, and I was fast. I was doing Ben. I was in Lisp. I was in the whole thing, man. I was deep into it, automating things, and it was my world for the longest time, and really enjoyed it. But as I mentioned to you all, what we found was that AutoCAD would iterate so often that our books, they would publish one day, and it just seemed like 6 months later they're out of date, and it would go, that one wouldn't. And so it was just this continual churn, trying to keep the updates going, and we just didn't have a stomach for it at that point anymore. We were just we had other things we wanted to do.
Creating
kind
content
of like being an Apple app developer.
A lot like that.
Got to.
So the joy and the passion went out of it. So I just went back and really focused on the teaching part, really creating cool experience. Yeah, there's one. That is a workbook right there. That's one of the workbooks for it. So we took this really different approach. We had the fundamentals of AutoCAD as a textbook. And then, Ben, you'll really appreciate this. We did workbooks for mechanical, workbook for architectural, and then we were kind of ahead of our time. I said, let's do one for electrical. And so we were doing electronic schematics and also electrical. Well, actually, it was all electronics, not electronics. So we were doing schematics, and it was great. I really enjoyed it. And we did a couple of versions.
Actually, by doing that, we don't know this, right? But speculatively, just by doing that, you may have triggered what became AutoCAD Electrical, which was a separate company founded by a guy named Scott Reese, who was, when I was working at Autodesk, Scott Reese was the senior VP and general manager for the division that owns Fusion, which I was a product manager for. He got to Autodesk through selling them his company that made AutoCAD Electrical, which was an add-on. It was basically symbol and library management for industrial electrical systems. And it may have been your books that inspired him to actually do that in the first place. Who knows, right?
Well, I'll go with that. I'm going to go with that. I'm going to say Ben said this, so this must be true.
It's possible that, yes.
He's now a
Ben said
CEO.
it's-
While I was still there, he left and got a CEO job at I forgot the name of the company now, but another company that does, similar things like add-ons and is in partnership. But yeah.
Yeah, the other co-author there, Jay Zerbel, I have to mention him. He's the one that kind of drug me through this journey. And I remember one of the things that we did was we made this wacky decision. We wanted to do our own page layout because we could get paid more. And boy, what a disaster! That we should have never have said that. But the nice thing about it was back in the the early '90s, they sent us these 1200 DPI laser printers for proofs. I was like, wow, yeah, nice. I know back in the day that was really something.
Yes.
And so it was a lot. It was a lot of fun though. And again, I wouldn't change the experience, but man, textbooks are not. There's no money in it. I will just tell you that. Yeah. So I just tell everybody.
I don't know if you saw Jonathan Pallant's question before. I just wanted to bring that up again because I just find that an interesting question.
Yeah.
If you had AutoCAD 12 on a 486 or 586 running DOS today, could you, or even on a Windows PC?
I
would even run.
I'm really curious now. This may be something I want to try. I'd really like to try it with FreeDOS, see if it would run under FreeDOS, because FreeDOS has really come a long way as far as compatibility. So that would be really interesting. But you could absolutely, AutoCAD 12, even though it was a DOS-based application, one of the things it was fabulous for were these keystroke shortcuts. And even in the Windows version, those of us who came up through the DOS ranks, we weren't using that mouse to click around. We were using that keyboard. And those keyboard commands, man, there's still some of them are still in my muscle memory. I know I could just do some quick stuff like that in no time. But yeah, you absolutely could. So sounds like somebody's got a copy of version 12 out there somewhere.
I
might be a gig in there.
Yeah,
version 1.6 or so of OrCAD, which is the schematic. Back in the day was the industry standard schematic. It's from 1988 or something, right? That was the first CAD I got my hands on. I ran it on my dad's 286, and I spent a week and a half or so trying out all the different .drv files just to even get it to launch the display and actually get into a graphical display mode. Yeah. Eventually, I found that the best driver that came with it was a generic EGA driver, and I was because we had a VGA card in the computer. We could do 800 by 600, and I'm like, well, I don't know. There's no other way I can get this to work, so I'll just deal with it. And yeah, it's like designing through this little porthole. I could see like one op amp and its surrounding components at a time.
And printing, same thing. I did. You had to tape the paper together.
Well, I did dozens of. I had a dot matrix printer back then, and it worked enough. But I had dozens of schematics I drew using that, and just no mouse, just using the arrow keys to go grid points. And in a sense, it was like it was really slow compared to what we do now. But in one sense, it was actually safer because you were always on grid, So, and then same thing with AutoTrax, Protel AutoTrax for DOS.
So Jonathan said
DOSBox pretty good.
Does it run? DOSBox. That's what it's called. It's not FreeDOS. It's DOSBox. Thank you, Ben.
FreeDOS,
Jonathan also.
FreeDOS is another. Yeah, I've tried that too. That'll work as well on a VM. Yeah.
Are they both open source? They're both open source, aren't they?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah. So Jonathan said it's actually a two-part question, but I love that you mentioned dot matrix printers because that's a whole retro thing too. But what I would say is if somebody is interested in AutoCAD Release 12 and wants to try and do something and they don't have a copy, LibreCAD is probably about as close as you can get to AutoCAD. I don't know if you're familiar with that, Ben. That's the open source 2D.
I've opened it. I've installed it and opened it. That's about it.
You can. It's pretty keystroke friendly with AutoCAD. I mean, the keystrokes are very similar. You can configure it to be so that might even be a better option if they want something on a modern computer and they want to try and get something done. It's okay. I mean, it's not AutoCAD, but it probably is AutoCAD 9. It has most of the features of maybe AutoCAD 9.
Cool.
Yeah, I used I don't know what the official release number was, but the 2002 version, I got quite familiar with that because years after graduating college with my associates, I went back to university, and one of the first classes we did, we had to do a design in AutoCAD 2002. And I was really impressed with the onboarding experience. It used the Lisp programming, and they had a bunch of tutorials, and they would animate the actual thing and tell you what to do next. And you'd walk through the whole tutorial interactively in the actual software. It wasn't a video. They were actually driving the software and getting you to a place where you had to take the next step after them playing a little audio file that would tell you what to do. It would demo it and tell you what to do, and then you would do it. It was just so good.
They started doing that with AutoCAD 2000, which was the last version that we wrote for, and they started to build that back in. I'll tell you, one of the best things about we were a certified AutoCAD or Autodesk authors, and one of the great parts about that was you got pre-release versions, you got to talk to the developers because you had to have everything written before it came out, and so you got to do feature requests, and they were just starting to play with that. And they didn't go, if I remember, I'm trying to remember because this is all coming back. It's just flooding right now, Ben. They decided not to because they weren't quite ready. So they had baked it in, but it wasn't quite ready for prime time. So they had like this really light, here's how you kind of get started. And then they went all in 2002.
Yeah, it was super impressive. And they had nothing like it for Fusion. They're still working on something.
Yeah, I'm out when it comes to Fusion, as we talked about.
It's going to take a while because there's a lot of people involved, and you know how that can work. But what they'll do will be marvelous once they do it. But I haven't seen anything better before or since that 2002 for onboarding a user in a new complicated productivity software package. You know, every company that does CAD dreams of having that. It's actually really hard to do. It takes a pretty big team. You need trainers involved. You need testers who will step through every single thing and then report when they hit a snag, because they will, and there'll be a lot of them. Yeah, it's pretty tough. But
SketchUp does a pretty good job with it, but it's not it's not that level of quality though. You're right.
Yeah, SketchUp I used briefly way back. I want to say in 2010, when it was still free. And then I think I mentioned to you before the show, I ended up just buying a Libre because it's super easy to use. And I've maintained that through all the years. And I also have Fusion 360 because I was employed by Autodesk for a time for Fusion 360, and I got to know it. It's actually super easy to use for 3D. So, yeah, there's a lot of options out there. FreeCAD, I know a lot of our community would be into the open source completely, and it's come a long way, but it still needs a lot of work.
Yeah.
It needs a lot of work.
Blender's entering into parametric modeling. I just saw that, and Blender's just always been overwhelming for me. I can't figure out Blender to save my life.
Yeah,
and I've given you a headache. Yes.
Yeah, me too.
Blender is amazingly powerful, though.
It's
you can tell it's open source, but it's actually built by the people using it to make feature films,
VFX.
Yeah.
And so, you know, my son started learning Blender. He's 16.
Oh, kids can learn it quick. Yeah.
And he was going through tutorials, and he lost a little bit of interest because it with professional grade software, it takes a long time to really get there. But once you're there, you're super, super productive.
I don't have the time to get there.
I don't either. He got a long way. But for animating things, it's just incredible.
I think the most I've ever accomplished with that is drawing that box and rendering it. And then beyond that, I said, this is too painful. I'm going to leave. So, you know, and I think a lot of it is I'm just stuck in my ways. I'm just AutoCAD and how I use that. And then having done so many hours in SketchUp now, that's just easier for 3D modeling.
Yeah. So Steve, did you ever get into teaching classes as well, since you were?
I mean, I was primarily I was a faculty member for 17 years before I got into administration, and taught primarily, so Ben, I really appreciate that you started with your associate's degree. Let me just say that because I teach for a community college where that's what we offer, the associate degrees, and get people, workforce ready and get them out there and getting high wage jobs. So spent 17 years doing that, but also dabbled in advanced manufacturing. So I was also the chair for advanced manufacturing, which was a lot of fun because then I got to get into robotics, get into computer aided design, computer aided manufacturing, tying it all together and going from design all the way to completion of a project. So that was a lot of fun. So I've just always dabbled and always been involved in it. I mean, and then, as I've moved into administration, one of the things that I hate about it is I lost that connection with, those tools. So I still teach as an adjunct every once in a while for Purdue Polytechnic here in our local community. And I teach design thinking, which is a blast because it's like a Kickstarter project. We go from what's your idea to let's create a prototype at the end and all the things that need to happen in between. So we do some 3D printing, we do some physical computing. I have them all of them have to buy an Arduino. We spend time in that. So that's the way I kind of dabble in it while I lose my mind doing the administrative stuff. So, but I have to have a creative outlet.
I really wish classes like that had have been available to me when I was in my college years. That would have made it. I mean, I loved the college I went to was awesome, had some really great teachers, had a few duds as well, but mostly really great teachers. But back then we were never integrating much of it to the real world. The closest we came was we would do our own projects and we would decide if we were doing a control system for something, we would choose what it was controlling and we just worked it all out on our own. I think
that's why I liked drafting and design in college, Ben, because I was doing what I would be doing. We were sitting in late at night, working in the CAD lab, getting our drawings done, having some fun across, or ordering pizzas late at night and cramming. And it just felt like, oh, this is going to be my life. I can do this. I can deal with this.
I can do this.
And then, teaching just kind of took me in a different direction where I got to kind of lead that. And I thought, oh, this is even better.
But that's also, it's obviously, for some people, it's a learned skill. For some, it's a gift. I think for you, it's a gift, but it's also perfectly in line with being a content producer, right? The reason you have a good channel and good videos is because you know how to convey meaning well. So that's...
Well, I appreciate that you said I had a good channel. Can I quote you on that, Ben? Because I need all the Oh, by the way, for your viewers, I am 7 away from, and I know it's not a big number, but for me, I'm kind of excited about it. I am 7 away from 3,000 subscribers. So I'm going to steal. I'm going to see if I can steal 7 of your folks to say, "Hey,
guys,
get me over the 3." Come on, guys,
just do it. Just do it. Let's make it happen today. It's like we could do it in the next minute.
Well, I hope so. And I've told my guys that my followers, they need to make sure and be over here too. So we're a little cross pollination here.
Yep.
Absolutely.
I will tell you, you guys get into discussions that hurt my head like Blender sometimes, I will tell you. But I sit there and so it's like ASMR for me in the background. I'll have it on in hopes that eventually something's going to seep in there. I'm going to go, oh, wait, I know what they're talking about. I think I understand that.
Well, that's like me with BitBoy Crypto sometimes in the morning.
Oh, yeah.
I'm a degree qualified computer systems engineer, and I still struggle to keep up with anything related to crypto. It's like, and I know I'm not the only one. I don't mind admitting it. A lot of people are like, oh, yeah. I know about that stuff. I know what an NFT is.
So somebody just said I hit 3K. Jason just said I hit 3K. Is that right? Yes. I knew coming on here, there'd be something out of this, Bill. I didn't know what it would be.
Man says there's 6 to go. But maybe you actually just passed it in the hour we've been chatting with you. I hope that you have. Honestly, I've had a channel. I've had a channel since 2008, and you'd think I'd be past 200K by now, but I never. Yeah. I ended up being employed by Altium to make videos for their channel instead of doing them for my own, and so it languished, and I'm still not even at 1K. So, I'll tell you what, that's 800.
So,
sorry.
Heck, I love that. That's awesome.
That's Blender. I was trying to cue it up, and yes,
that's great.
I had to do that. But that's a Blender. Those are supposed to be little white skulls in the background, the little white ones. So sorry
So
for interrupting.
who did that, Bill? No, who did that, Bill? Did you do that or somebody on your team?
I did it after watching a tutorial by the Blender guy, the Blender Guru guy. So yeah, I'll play it one more time here. Hang on a second.
I like it.
It looks nice. It's
that does look
cool.
Yeah,
now can you do one? Can you do one for Coriolis Effect?
Oh.
And another one for Schematica. That's my channel, by the way, people. Schematica.
Oh well, if we're taking orders, I need a little spinning joystick. That's what I need to do that. No, I
your logo.
I have the skills to do that.
Yeah, your logo looks good. I like the colors. I like the Atari joystick look. Yeah, that's
yeah, it's very nice. And
well, you should like the colors, Bill, because they came right off the +4. So I grabbed. Yeah, those are all the colors that kind of. Of course, it's a little more gradiated scale on the +4 because it's longer. But I grabbed all of those from there. I said I need that because that's where I just kind of really got into retro with the YouTube channel. I thought I got to have that history. As a matter of fact, I don't know if I shared this with you, but this is the this one. And I made these custom labels. Let me get that out of there for this.
So, I love it.
Yeah, that's been fun too. So
yeah, I've been meaning to get one of those as a stopgap for not being able to really get my hands on an Amiga right now.
I think though I want to do instead of Combian. There's something called Bare Metal 64. Have you seen that, either one of you?
I haven't. No.
Metal.
BMC
64.
Yeah.
So this Combian runs on a Linux distro, so it takes a while to boot up. If you do, this is bare metal, so it runs directly on the hardware. I want to try that. That's going to be my next one. That's on my list of things to do, is to replace Combian with Bare Metal 64. And there's other emulators that come with it. So I just don't have enough hours in a day with a real job. That's the thing. I've got this long list of things I really want to do.
Right.
I end up doing a live stream because I don't have time to do the things I really want to do. At least that engages my community. And we'll do things like opening up things and talking, and I'll play some games because I do like games. Admittedly, I do like to play some games too. So
that was
what's your favorite? Go ahead, Bill.
Well, I was going to say, what's your favorite game, or what's a good game that reminds you?
That's exactly what my question was.
Yeah.
So I just tweeted, as a matter of fact, my favorite all-time game, if you're talking 8-bit games, at the arcade first, there were two of them. There was Zaxxon, which I just love because it's the first isometric shooter. Loved it. Galaga was always just fabulous.
Galaga is amazing. Yeah.
Galaga is just, and so I've played every version of that. But I'm going to tell you, Ben, you asked what's my favorite. You've got to check out, because I just did this on my live stream. We downloaded the Galaga version for the Atari 2600, which they never had an official version. But the homebrew community have created this version for the Atari 2600. I can't believe what they've pushed out of an Atari 2600. And I have the Hyperkin Retron 77, which is a recreation of an Atari 2600. Hold on, Bill. I can share that with you too, I think.
Okay. Yeah, because the 2600 is just a fancy line buffer. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's all it is, right?
Yeah, it's amazing.
So this is a modern recreation. And but what's great is it's got HDMI out. So again, there's that modern that I really like. You've got some buttons on the back. It's got it will play the original cartridges, but it's also got a custom firmware that you can hack called Stella, and you can play all the ROMs from the downloaded ROM files. And then it uses the standard ports that we all know and love right there.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's just fabulous. So we, my last live stream, we just sat around and played some games on this for a while, and
very cool.
That's what I do on a Sunday afternoon. Is I have a little live stream where we're playing retro games. But that I was just floored. Now, again, because I wasn't like a super gamer on the Commodore computers, I used them more for productivity. I don't really have. I mean, I really remember the LucasArts. What was it? The point and click games.
There was one by a ILM that
Chat
was
room will help us.
by LucasArts that was really good with they had anti-aliasing down way past everybody else, and it was on a black and white checkerboard with these where you would do a gravitational push on a ball, and it was just, we never played a game like that. So the LucasArts thing blew us away when we saw it. So, and I never saw it transition to the Amiga. I only ever saw it on the 64. So it was.
Yeah, I just, I'm again, the Amiga stuff, don't even ask me about because I can't even help you there. So,
Well, the Amiga, the one game that, we liked Marble Madness. That was what we saw.
do
It's
you
like
remember Marble
great
Madness?
Marble Madness game because we used to try and play it in the coin op. But then was Mindwalker, that the soundtrack, that and it would just run. We had it on 15 computers all at once, and it just brings
That would
the
have been
brain
so
dripping
fun.
out of your ears. It's just so now if I want to play an Amiga game, I actually just run a simulation. People like, what's your favorite computer? I'm like, well, I emulate. Honestly,
Yeah. What emulator do you use? Because all the decent ones, when I was still doing that, they wanted a pretty decent.
I even do the online
license
ones.
fee.
Yeah, just things written in
I think
Java.
there's probably got to be good free ones by now, right? But I
Yeah,
haven't.
UAE is the gold standard, I think.
Yes,
I downloaded
yes.
one. Let me see if I can. I don't know if I have it on here or not. There was another one I just found recently. Not sure what it's called.
Yeah, WinUAE. That's it. I have
WinUAE,
used WinUAE. Yeah, I have.
and it's
now that
available
you
for
mention
Linux
it.
and Mac too. So let's see. I thought there was another one I downloaded. Is it virtual? Let me see. I can't find it. I'm sure the chat room will tell us here in a minute what the other Amiga emulator is. But one of the things I also liked about the emulators, I also like that Cloanto offers the ROMs for them so that you can kind of be legal. So, Bill, where are you with all this ROM stuff versus Commodore
Belongs to
branding
Commodore.
stuff? And
yeah, shouldn't. Yeah, don't. I'm kind of a company man in that. I would never put a ROM up on a website I owned. It's not my property. Yeah.
So Cloanto evidently bought the ROMs from somebody, they claim, and so there's this big convoluted history. But I know it's just been, for me, depressing to see the Commodore brand just diluted so many different ways, with somebody saying they own Commodore, somebody saying they own Amiga,
There's a
somebody
recent
saying
fight with that too over one of the Kickstarter things, and it's just I have no idea how it's going to play out, but. I wish
half the problem
Commodore
is
would enter the open source, so that we could use that symbol of the 80s, but it still belongs to somebody.
Technically, and I think Jonathan makes a good point here, right? Jonathan said, at least copyright holders with Amiga ROMs are often still around. That's a good point. The C64 games, a lot of those companies don't even exist anymore.
Right.
Probably the developers, like the original programmers, are mainly still around, but it's like nobody knows who. It's just kind of vaporized, a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
Who actually owns this is really hard to figure out. And
this weekend when we were live streaming some of the Atari 2600 games, I made sure to only live stream the ones I had the actual physical cartridge for.
Good point. Yeah.
Because Pac-Man, somebody still owns Pac-Man. Somebody still owns, those license to the game. So where are we? It doesn't look like they're going after people for promoting it probably, but still, I'm always just a little leery about and maybe that's because I'm a content creator too, right? I wrote books. I don't want people.
Right.
So there's a little bit of that too.
How much effort goes into things, and you deserve to be paid for your work. So, and I feel the same way. It's funny because when I started using CCS64, and there were the first generation of Amiga emulators out there, like Bleem and stuff. But I settled in with CCS64, and I downloaded a whole lot of binary files for Commodore cartridges. And it was like, no one cared. Nobody cared.
Right.
Back then, because retrocomputing wasn't a thing. Like, we just wanted to play the old games that made us happy and had the cool 8-bit sound. Right. And but now, I think now it's more of an issue, because all these years later, 20 years later, it's become so much more of a vibrant hobby and community. So anytime a large group of people start doing something, business people notice. It's inevitable, and they'll start looking at, where is the money in this? There's a group of people here and some attention, and there must be money there because of that. So where is it? And
well, and
so
I think that's,
feel like
you know, when we
they're
were,
more likely to chase people up now than they were 20 years ago when they wouldn't have given it two pennies to care. They'd say, let them do their thing. That's not where the money is right now.
I'll tell you, that was one of the things when, you know, going back to that guy right there, it's one of the things I wondered about how the license happen, all that. And I've been really pleased watching them really want to try and protect that license and understand the history of Commodore and really wanting to take that forward in a respectful way. So again,
Right.
hats off to the developers of the Mega65 who really, I think, done that in the right way. They've reached out to Cloanto, they've gotten rights, you know, they've really, and they've actually even created their own open ROM so that they stay on the right side of things, so that they can say, yes, we provide an open ROM and we provide a closed ROM, so that they can go on both sides.
Interesting.
So yeah, it's been interesting.
Very cool. So, well, cool. So let's do a plug for our own site here. If you've enjoyed today's show, go to Coriolis-effect.com. For there, you'll find a Discord invite, and that'll take you to our Discord channel.
I'll put up a banner.
So there you go. And spell Coriolis right. I spelled it wrong in one of the title slates, and it looked.
I did too.
Yeah. Well, that's how I have to say it, Coriolis. I have to I've tokenized it into like 4 syllables there. So excellent.
Oh, I created a folder by accident instead of the actual banner.
I hate technology. I can't stand it. So
I don't know how you made a living with it, Bill. I just don't.
You grit your teeth the whole time because no computer is ever fast enough. Have you noticed? Computers do what you tell them to do, not what you want them to do, first off.
That's true.
And second, no computer's as fast as I want it to be. It's always could be a little faster. So
yeah.
humble.
Well, no matter how much more power we put into them,
I still want it faster.
The software people will always go a little bit beyond what the
hardware.
Well, but then we get, as I've learned with my channel, then we've got this other complication called bandwidth that is part of the culprit now too. It's not necessarily the processor; it's just the bandwidth, the up and down. You know, we've got it's balanced. I've got good download speed, but I can't get a decent upload speed unless I upgrade to their business class or whatever.
Yeah, you'd have to use fiber instead of time divisional multiplexing and sharing the upload with your neighbors. Yeah.
So I know our county is looking at, they've got this initiative now to do 1 gig symmetrical all through the county. So part of trying to get everybody online. So I'm like keeping my fingers crossed for that won't be outrageous, but I think their goal is to try and make it affordable. So I'm looking forward to that.
Very cool. Well, hey, thanks for coming on today, though. This was great, especially seeing some of the old stuff, especially somebody that appreciates the old TED. I think it's a cool looking machine, and it had the right idea, I think, but we'll never know, you know. So,
well, I want to thank you guys. This has just been a blast. They say don't meet your heroes, Bill. So we'll talk later, and I'll let you know if that was the case. But I've always really enjoyed your stories and love the book. I'm gonna plug the book for you because I've been plugging it. I like to call it Bill's random stream of consciousness in an organized fashion.
Yeah.
But it's fabulous because you can kind of go through it. You can move through it and talk. And I admittedly went right to the +4 stuff first because I wanted to really read about that, but then went back and caught up. So I think it's a great feature. And Ben, it was great to get to know you too. Again, first time I've had a chance to talk with you, but knowing that we had all these similarities with guitars and CAD, and so just fun hanging out with the two of you.
About guitars, but you'll come back again in a while.
We'll have to do that sometime.
We'll talk more about the music.
And thanks to your chat room. So I have to thank your chat room for getting me up to 3,000 too. So there you go.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Yes.
So excellent. So we will see here. We're not sure what's happening next week. So I'll just stop there and say maybe we'll be here next week. Maybe we will.
We'll have something. There's a chance it will be pre-recorded, but it will be something you don't want to miss even if that's the case, because we're trying to work out with Dave Jones time zone wise, because he's in Sydney and it's 11 a.m. is 4 a.m. there. I'm not going to drag him out of bed to do a live stream. We'll probably pre-record. If that's not next week, it will be coming up soon. Otherwise, everyone have a great weekend. It's good to meet you, Steve, and all the best with what you're doing, and we'll have you back on again sometime down the road.
Great. Yeah. And if we ever want to reach out to the developers of the Megger65 and you want to really get an in-depth, really one of those deep technical discussions that I can't have with you about, let me know and I'll be happy to connect you.
Yeah, it would be great to get them on the show too. Yep.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Excellent. Well, everybody have a safe weekend and a good weekend, and we'll catch you here next week. So,
great.
Bye, everyone.
See you guys.
Bye.